Hi, I'm Chike Coleman. This is Road Reviews, the Cinematic Underground. Chuck Kaplinski will be on a bit later. This week we're going to be talking about two movies, but I wanted to share with you very quickly about a movie that I saw that I really loved. This would be The Wedding Ringer, starring Kevin Hart and Josh Gad. The premise of the film centers on a man who is getting married and has no best man because he apparently has no friends. He hires what is known now as the wedding ringer, the guy who can come in, get him a set of groomsmen, and be his best man for his wedding because he feels he has no friends. This results in Josh Gad and Kevin Hart forming a wonderful partnership about basically being best friends even though they're not, and of course Kevin Hart's character being the ringer basically learns to have Josh Gad as his best friend. The comedy is hilarious because it's basically all about Josh Gad learning how to be quote-unquote cool and also accepting the weirdness in himself. And Kevin Hart does a really good job at being both frank and blunt throughout the entire film to kind of teach this guy the ropes of being cool and having your own individualistic style, but also not making a fool of yourself. It's a really, really fun comedy that just makes you laugh out loud every 5 seconds because either you're depending on Josh Gad doing something really, really stupid, or you're depending on Kevin Hart to really just make you laugh throughout the entire film. And there are a couple of really great scenes, which I don't want to spoil for you here, that really make this comedy pop. It's one of those films that really just kind of stays with you after you leave the theater and you think about all the funny moments that happened in it. Also this week, the Art Theater is doing a showing of Selma, which we've talked about in weeks previous, by Rebecca DuVernay, starring David Oyelowo. And that film will be showing at the Art for the next 2 weeks because people were excited and exuberant to see Selma. And as you know from our previous discussion, it's a very deep and intense film about the civil rights movement and the journey between Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, to get voting rights for African American people. I reiterate that this is a very powerful film. There are going to be some scenes, if you're in my generation age, between 20 and 30, that are probably really going to shock you. A lot of people think that they know the civil rights movement and they know the basics of what happened, but this film really reiterates how dark and intense times were in that period of time in the 1950s. And again, that will be showing at the Art this week. That is Selma. And now I can welcome Chuck Kaplinski to the program, who writes for the News Gazette and the Illinois Times, where we will now talk about the two new movies that were out this week that I saw and that you saw. The first of which is Clint Eastwood's American Sniper, starring Bradley Cooper. And this film I kind of have a little bit of background on because in 2012 there was a horrible yet mildly entertaining reality series called Stars Earn Stripes, in which celebrities would compete for donations to essentially earn money for their military or armed forces charities. And one of the contestants on that program who was partnered with the celebrity was Chris Kyle. He was partnered with Dean Cain. And there we got to learn a little bit more about his background, that he was the most deadly sniper in American history. You got to see a little bit of his personality, and that really kind of moved me to see, you know, such camaraderie among very rich people and the people who've served our country, and seeing the rich people try to honor the people who served our country. And so that's my background on Chris Kyle. I came into American Sniper with a bit of trepidation, and the reason I came in with a bit of trepidation is because I had that little bit of background. I think Bradley Cooper's performance as Chris Kyle was stellar. He made quite a transformation to be the best version of the actual person humanly possible. There's a lot of very moving moments, a lot of very intense moments involving the kills that occur in the film, and the pressure that puts him under. There are a couple things I didn't like. The early childhood scenes involving Chris Kyle's childhood, involving basically living in what I would assume is a Bible Belt. He said he's from Texas, so there was a really interesting upbringing for Chris Kyle in terms of how his father reiterated who he should be in the family. Being the sheepdog, the protector of the weak, basically, is what his father instilled in him at an early age. And he also took Chris hunting at an early age, which is intercut with the shot he's about to take to kill a potential, I won't call it a terrorist, it's really a child, really, to be frank with it. A child that's carrying a bomb of some sort. And Chris has to take the shot or not take the shot, and he's making that judgment call when we are flashed into his childhood. We see him kind of grow up and how he basically treats people. He's not quite quick to anger, but he's quick to judgment, I would say. And those kinds of things both help him and hurt him throughout this film. Chuck, what did you think of American Sniper?
I think it's a very solid movie. It's not without its faults. It has the best of what Clint Eastwood does as a director and some of the worst things that he does as a director. One of them being that most times he stays too long on things. His films are too long and should be wrapped up usually about 10, 15 minutes earlier, and I had that feeling with this film as well. I realized that they wanted to stick to the facts as much as possible in that he had 4 tours of duty, and so they had to cover much of that. But because of that, the film, in sticking to that, the film has a choppy feel to it. He's at home, he goes away to combat. He comes back home, he goes away to combat. Yes, that was the situation, but it does make for a choppy movie. I think that the whole point of the film, for me, was that this is what our military does to people who join up in order to serve what they feel is a good cause. And the tragedy that results is how much this affects Kyle, how it changes him into a man who, ironically, cannot enjoy what we put forth as being freedom, even though he is in a foreign country trying to fight and give freedom as we determine it to another people. When he comes home, he cannot function in a way that he should. I think one of the best scenes I've seen all year in a movie in 2014 was when he comes home, comes stateside, and he cannot go home. And he instead goes to a bar just to gather and control himself, and his wife calls him, finds out where he's at, and can't understand why he can't come home. And that moment there, Cooper just drives it home in such an effective, subtle way. I thought it was incredibly moving. And this is a movie that's very interesting, I think, not only in what it says, but how people are reacting to it. I think that whatever your politics are that you bring to the film, people are finding something about their politics in the movie that they can latch on to. Obviously, right-wing believers view this as a patriotic film, a film about their hero, a guy who can do no wrong. Those on the other opposite side of the coin are saying, look, this is a tragedy all the way around. Not only where Kyle is concerned, but also in the fact that we really shouldn't be there, and that many innocents were killed along the way. And they're looking for ways to slam the film for not taking a stance on whether we should have been in the wars that Kyle's was in or not. Much of the controversy that's around this film is false, I think. People are looking for things that this movie is not intended to, was never intended to cover. The purpose of this film was not to open up a debate as to whether these wars were justified in any way, shape, or form. I took away from it a character study. A character study of this guy who I think ended up getting in over his head and tragically ends up paying for it in the end.
I think one of the main things that I took away from the film, thank you very much, is the fact that ultimately this film, in my opinion, would have been better suited as a 4-hour miniseries of some sort, because you mentioned the choppy feel, and I definitely got that myself. When viewing the film, I thought this could be much better done, spread out over time. And for me, the main detractor was, okay, we're going from, his personal life to the war again, to the personal life to the war again, back and forth, back and forth. And I feel like it would have been much better paced if he just got a 4-hour miniseries from HBO that said, okay, here are these two parts of his life that really kind of show and shape who Chris Kyle is as a soldier, as a man. You can see all those faults play out, all those emotional vulnerabilities play out, and it's, I would say, a more complete portrayal of what Chris Kyle endured as a human being going through these wars.
Well, and while we were supposed to take away, and I did take away the point that he is ruined, he cannot function here on the home front, I think the film lacks from not enough scenes dealing with him and his family, or being unable to deal with him and his family. And I think that an extended format, like you're pointing out, would really have helped that, and really would have made that point even more salient and more effective.
I especially agree, because I think Clint Eastwood, if he had attached to direct all 4 episodes, that would have brought the star power and the ratings.
And I'm just wondering, well, I don't think that this would have had any problem, obviously, being a hit in whatever format they would have presented it, from the reaction we've had to this. I'm curious as to when this comes out on DVD, if there are any scenes that were cut, things that were filmed that they cut due to length considerations for the box office. See if they had, in fact, did film some things that would have fleshed these things out that we're talking about.
Right. And it's currently at a 73% at Rotten Tomatoes, so it's not doing horribly, but it's still not as strong as people would hope it would be.
I don't think they care about that. I mean, for a film
I don't think so either.
This is a movie that has changed the paradigm for a lot of things. I mean, this is a movie that during its first weekend put up a gross that we usually associate with a superhero film. And it is a superhero film for some people, and I think that's one of the reasons for its appeal. But this is really interesting in a lot of ways, and I think it puts a certain color on the Oscar race, too, for Best Picture. I think there's a couple things brewing here that are going to make the Oscars interesting for the first time in a while.
I also think this film is very similar to The Hurt Locker in that way.
Sure.
And there's that same amount of intensity, there's the same amount of emotional distance when the soldier returns home. So I felt like I was watching a twofer. Like, I could easily watch The Hurt Locker and American Sniper together in one whole session and have a more complete picture of the struggles of our military than watching just one or the other. I really feel like it's a strong film that has a lot of faults, like you say. Clint Eastwood's direction both helps him and hurts him here.
That last battle sequence is completely confused.
Yeah,
I had a hard time following it at all. So, yeah.
But overall, I would say it's a good movie that people should see.
And it will change your mind about Cooper if you've been on the fence about him.
Oh,
he's great.
Very true, very true, very true.
He's great.
The second film I wanted to talk about today is titled Welcome to Yesterday, or Project Almanac.
Oh, welcome. Okay.
And this is a found footage time travel film involving 5 teens who are helping one of the 5 teens get into MIT with a project. That project works and he gets into MIT, but he is about $20,000 short of his actual goal to go to MIT because his family is poor, although it's arguable that you don't really see that at all throughout the film.
Well, but the father is dead, so we're working on one income from the mother, so...
Okay, I'll give you that.
You don't have to give it to me, it's in the movie.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about that. But basically, he finds a project that his father was working on prior to his death. But before that, he finds a video camera with his image on it from his 7th birthday, and he's wondering, how in the world did I get
You need to explain that better. What do you mean his image from it?
Okay.
It's his 7th birthday. Of course he's going to be there.
Rephrase. He finds a present-day version of himself in video footage of his 7th birthday. And from there, he kind of instinctively goes down to his dad's basement, looks around, pokes around, and finds a machine that he believes would help him travel back in time. They do several little small test runs of this before testing it on themselves, and surprise, surprise, it works. They are able to turn back time 24 hours. And then they start playing with the longevity of how far back in time you can go. And that leads to some interesting results. It's one of those things where when it starts, anything that can go right will, and then later on, anything that can go wrong will. And of course, you have to deal with the causalities of time travel, and that's really very tough to do when you're a teenager, because you're focused on, oh, what's the fun of this? What's going to make this exciting for me? What are the kinds of things I can do? And they really play by very specific tropes with this film in terms of what the teenagers do. Basically, anything you can imagine a teenager would do, they do in this film when they're time traveling. They go back in time to fix their chemistry test. They go back in time to go to a concert they missed. They go back in time to fall in love. Those are the types of things that happen in this film. And while they're hackneyed and pretty much something that all teenagers would do, the real fault with this film really lies with the main character becoming very selfish at the end of the film and doing something incredibly stupid that really causes more ripples in the water, so to speak. And I went from liking this film a lot to really, really being displeased with it toward the end of the film, because there's something that happens at the very end of the film where I'm like, really? You're gonna give them that gift at the end of the film when they really truly don't deserve it, and it doesn't make sense for them to have it in the first place. I'm talking about the camcorder, the second camcorder.
Oh,
okay. Overall, I think this is an enjoyable movie for teens, and if you shut your brain off, you could enjoy it too. What did you think of Welcome to Yesterday / Project Almanac, Chuck?
There's nothing wrong with this movie that cutting about 20 or 25 minutes out of it wouldn't fix. The movie's pace is awful. They spend much too much time in the first hour going over these various sorts of experiments that they have to get right. And then once they get to the Lollapalooza concert, that sequence goes on much too long as well.
I would agree.
I think they belabor many points here. And I'm going to be surprised if teen audiences are actually going to stay engaged with it, to tell you the truth. If I found it slow, I'm sure that they're going to be frustrated with it as well. I wish the characters were more likable.
Yes, yes.
That was hard for me as well. And I fault the director on this. I don't know who directed it. I think it's a first-time person.
I have no idea, but I will look it up right now.
But as far as reining the performances in and making these kids a bit more realistic and more likable, I think I would have forgiven the movie a lot of its faults and would have been more willing to go on the ride. And I realize, yes, maybe I'm around teenagers too often in my real life, and any more of this in a 2-hour movie is I just want to slit my throat. But really, the writing needs to be a bit more solid. And I did like the time travel stuff, though. I did like this whole notion, and of course we hear this whole, as you see this time traveling trope that if you change one little thing, it has this
ripple effect.
And that one little thing that they change really is interesting. I thought it was really cool how that did occur, and then they could go back and trace, well, this happened because of this, and then that happened because of this, and this. That was neat.
Yeah,
and then,
the
of
fact
course,
that they were able to work it out made me happy.
Right, and then, okay, let's go solve this problem, but of course, in solving the problem, it just
create a
becomes
couple more.
Worse. So I like that whole trap that they do fall into. And I liked the thing at the end with the other camera, because
Why?
because it shows them, or it gives them the opportunity to learn from their mistake. Are they going to make the same mistakes twice, or hopefully are they going to just put the cameras aside and live their lives? And of course they leave us hanging. But
Well, no,
I
they
think
don't. They kind of give us an answer, because what happens at the end of the film? The guy
fades to black.
No, the guy talks to the girl.
Yeah.
And he has more confidence from that. And he knows exactly what she's going to say when.
Yeah.
So you would argue they didn't learn their lesson at all.
Well, but he learned his lesson as far as picking up the girl. Just don't go back in time.
Fine,
This movie certainly isn't worth arguing over.
I'll give you that.
Okay.
I'll give you that.
All right.
Like you, I hated 3 out of the 5 characters in this film.
Yeah, it's a problem.
There was a character that I was like, this is what Miles Teller was in 21 and Over. What isn't it? The guy who buys the Maserati, the guy who.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
we've seen it all
God,
before,
it was
so.
just so obnoxious. I hated it.
Yeah. But to defend it, even though I don't want to, as you point out, this is probably what a immature high schooler would do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But again, the bottom line is, I need to like these people if I'm going to spend 2 hours of my time with them.
The nerdy aspect of the main character was great, especially once he had the girlfriend.
Sure, yeah, that was cool.
I love when there's one scene where I actually laughed so hard that I was like, oh, I can't believe that they just did this. Where he goes back in time after he's found out what he messed up and how he missed his moment.
Right, he's going to fix it. Mm-hmm.
And then he goes to his house, and she's there, and he has the most awkward, nerdy moment humanly possible. I just laughed so hard because I was like, yeah, even though I got it right, I would probably freak out at the same level too.
Yeah.
I liked the sister who was doing most of the filming, quote unquote, throughout the film. I thought she was pretty nice and pretty engaging.
I think we liked her because we barely saw her.
We liked her because we barely saw her, and she didn't make any of the mistakes of the other characters.
Yeah. Yeah, she's the cautionary voice there.
Yeah. Do we really need to do this? Do we really need to go there? But I love the one time she got her little bit of vengeance, even though I'd been telegraphed it in the trailers. That was really great for me. So overall, I'm gonna give this film a low score. I'm gonna give that 2 out of 5 because I really didn't care for it as much. What would you give it, Chuck?
About the same. Yeah.
About the same. What would you give American Sniper?
3.5 out of 4.
That's not bad. I would go 3 out of 4. Just because the direction being so kind of clunky. And of course, as we do every week, we should talk The Flash. Are we 2 weeks behind or just 1 week behind on this?
I think 2.
Okay, so we have 2 episodes to cover. First was Revenge of the Rogues, which involves the return of Leonard Snark, Captain Cold, and his accomplice, Heatwave, joins him in this foray. What did you think of Revenge of the Rogues? Did it endear you even more to the character of Captain Cold? Because I do recall you liking that episode that showcased the origin of Captain Cold.
Well, every hero needs a good villain. And
True.
And he is one of the Flash's better villains.
True.
And I thought that I like it because Wentworth Miller, I think, just really sunk his teeth into it.
He really did.
And I think that continued with this episode as well. There's nothing that this show has done wrong yet, as far as I'm concerned. And maybe I have too much of an affection for it. Because it's one of 2 shows that the entire family at home will actually sit down and watch.
That in Gotham?
No, that in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I'm surprised. Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Okay, I'll have to get into that.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's doing everything right. It's doing everything right, and I know it's doing everything right because it's pleasing to me, who knows the comic book story.
Yeah.
And it's also pleasing for other members of my family who had no idea what this was about, and they've been sucked in as well. And I think a lot of it has to do with just how well they've cast the show.
Yeah, I would agree.
Everyone is completely likable. But also, I think the structure of every episode, it's just the classic structure of that this type of show needs, in that it gives you more information, and then it poses one more little question, dangles something for you at the end that has you almost screaming as it goes to the credits, and you cannot wait until the next episode, to get that answer and see how they'll torture you at the end of that one. It's really perfectly constructed, and I think I really admire it for that, especially the newer episode after that.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was really, really clever.
I thought that was really, really clever, and I thought that episode was about, I forget what the character villain's name was. Do you remember?
He wasn't important. He was the Pulsar guy. But what was important is what we find out about the Doctor.
Yeah,
who has his home
invaded.
Yeah.
I really feel like the strength of this show rests solely on the kid who plays Barry Allen. If he wasn't likable, all the things he does, all that belief he instills in Dr. Wells wouldn't be as compelling. And the thing is, we know that Dr. Wells is a bad guy, and we know that Barry doesn't know. You know,
I'm not convinced he's a bad guy.
you're not convinced.
I'm not
Okay.
convinced. Nope. We're gonna
Well,
have to bet lunch or something on this because I don't think he's a bad guy.
I'm
We'll talk after the show.
I'm willing to go for that.
All
But
right.
I really thought that this week's episode was strong too because you had Iris getting her reporter status seemingly out of nowhere. Can you give me that at least?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. No, the
blog-
newspaper wants stories on the Flash. She writes the blog about the Flash. You know, as she says, they think I have access to this guy. And she doesn't, even though she does.
Yeah.
She doesn't realize it. No, I believe that without a problem.
Okay. I'll give you the blogging thing.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. But I think for me, what was really most rewarding was Cisco in Revenge.
He's always the best.
He's really always the best. And really, he I don't know what it is about him, but he just has so much heart.
He does.
He really does. As cold as Caitlin Snow can be, pun intended, he really enlivens things. And I love how, you know, you get a little bit of vulnerability from Cisco in the following week when the Pulse guy comes in.
Well, and not only that, but in this last episode, we got some more background on him.
Yeah.
And the relationship with him and Wells. And I was like, okay, this all makes sense as to why they stick with each other, even though they both made mistakes. The kid just brings, I'm not familiar with this actor, I need to learn his name. He just brings a sense of fun to it.
Yeah.
He always comes up with the name for the villain, and he takes great joy in that. And it's just like every single little piece comes together for that enjoyable whole 45 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I just love it.
It's fantastic. And if you're not watching The Flash,
Catch up quick.
You should be.
Yes, you should be.
Because it's stellar. It really is. So for next week, Chuck, is there a film that you specifically have in mind?
I have seen Black or White, and I would like for you to see it because I think we need to talk about it.
Okay.
Interesting
Black
movie.
or White will be my show next week, and I might do The Loft. Have you seen The Loft yet?
I will get to it.
Okay. So those will be the two new films we'll talk about next week. I'm Chike Coleman from the Wheelchair Watcher and Sound On Sight. That's Chuck Kaplinsky from the Illinois Times and the News Gazette. Find his reviews there. Find mine where I said my source was from. And we will talk to you next week. See you guys later. Bye.